President Trump, at a meeting this morning in front of television cameras, says, I have an idea how to break the stalemate.
It's time for Republicans to do what they have to do, and that's terminate the filibuster. It's the only way you can do it. And if you don't terminate the filibuster, you'll be in bad shape. We won't pass any legislation. There'll be no legislation passed for 3.25. We have 3.25 years, so that's a long time. But when they can't do an extension, and John, I think they've done an extension every single time they've ever been asked forever. This is the first time they haven't done an extension. Extensions are supposed to be easy, but if they won't do an extension, they won't do any bill, even a simple bill. And we should do our own bills. We should get out. We should do our own bills. We should open up. We should start tonight with the country's open. Congratulations. Then we should pass voter ID. We should pass no mail-in voting. We should pass all the things that we want to pass, make our elections secure and safe, because California is a disaster.
So if you're not aware of what the filibuster is, that is the requirement in the Senate to where to have a number of policies pass, you have to have 60 votes, not just a majority, but 60. So the so-called nuclear option, which you may hear a lot, is where, and this has been something that's been considered for quite a long time on both parties when they've been in the control of the Senate, is to just go with a simple majority. It's called the nuclear option because while it'll be great for whoever's in power at the time when they have it, then when the other party gets into power, then all of a sudden, now they've got all the cards. And one of the reasons why the filibuster has continued to exist and why the other parties, neither party has been able to get or been willing to get rid of it, is because they realize that it's the only thing that gives them any kind of power at all when they're in the minority. So right now, the Republicans have 53 senators. So even though the Democrats have less than 50, so they can't win a straight up vote in terms of just the numbers. They can make sure that they have to be considered if you have to get to 60 votes. So it's very rare that one side wins more than 60 election or seats in the Senate. So that means the minority party almost always has at least some leverage to try to get something that it wants in any kind of bills that are passed, et cetera. So to get the nuclear option, it's great if you're in power, but then it almost renders you moot. And that's exactly what President Trump was talking about right there. He said, we'll be able to do anything we want because we have the House, we have the Senate, we have the White House. So if it's just a simple majority, then as long as he can keep all of his, or at least 50 of his senators in check, then they can literally do anything they want. So he said, we can pass this, voter ID law. We can say no more voting, mail-in ballots. Of course, that's terrifying to the Democrats. They don't want to get rid of that at all. And we're going to touch on that in just a separate second. But this will also deepen the divide in America, because now that it's going to say, okay, half of Americans roughly that are Democrats or Democratic leaning, it's going to say that while the Republicans are in power, none of you matter. So we're not going to do anything you guys want. Trump said it himself. We're going to do everything we want. So they're not going to care about trying to find consensus, trying to find the best thing forward for the majority of the American people, for the vast majority, and how can we make things good for everybody. That will just completely go away if Trump gets what he wants here. Now, so far, the Republican senators, John Thune in particular, have said, we're not going to do that. We're unwilling to do that. He's pushed back on it, but Trump keeps pushing. They had this meeting here, and apparently after the cameras left, he was going to press them harder. As I checked just before we started making this video, that hasn't happened. That hasn't changed. So apparently that's not the case so far. Trump's trying to make his case, but that's what he wants to do. Now, let's take a look at a couple of these things here, because it is a lot of things that are up to date here. And one of them is, what are we going to do on this voter ID interested? Now, for various reasons, which I'm going to show you one of the key ones here, the Republicans say, we want voter ID. We want to be able to say, hey, if you're going to vote, we want to make sure it's who it's supposed to be. And so you need to have a voter ID. The Democrats have been against this for a long time. And here is one of the reasons why. I want to show you this from a Democratic supporter who is against voter ID. And here's what she says.
The impact of voter ID laws and why they are such a big deal is twofold. One is because they directly disenfranchise eligible voters who don't have the specific form of ID that they need to cast a ballot in their state. And a second reason for which they're a big deal is because of the extent to which they cause massive confusion and intimidation and an additional informational micro barrier for eligible voters getting out there to cast a ballot. No state has the same voter ID law as any other state. ID laws are different for voting in person versus voting by mail, particularly for young or infrequent or first-time voters. Voter ID laws cause tons of confusion across the country, and they can lead to a poor experience at the polls where at best you have to cast a provisional ballot or you go home and get the ID that you forgot to bring, but at worst you're turned away from casting a ballot.
Okay, I am for categorically enfranchisement. Everybody gets to vote who's authorized to vote. The states and the country has to set what are those requirements. And I think it should be a simple matter of that. And I don't think even the Democrats would be opposed to the conception here that if someone is a voter, that when they cast a vote, that it needs to be that person. And there needs to be some regulations and some safeguards to make sure that somebody else doesn't vote on behalf of another, or that people vote who have no authorization to vote, et cetera. And she lists a bunch of things there, and they are afraid of voter intimidation, some other things. Some of her arguments have some validity in terms of just categorically some people can feel intimidated, et cetera. But most of the things she mentioned in there are education issues. And if the Democrats are concerned about those things, then they can educate people on how to get it done. But my personal opinion, and this is one where I am just sharing where I come down, and I don't give a crap about either of the parties. I'm just telling you, as an American, it should be only an American citizen gets to vote in an American election. And it is absolutely reasonable to say whoever we decide by our laws is an eligible voter, whether that's by age or in your nationality or all those kind of things, whatever the laws are, then that's what needs to be upheld. We have to execute the law. We are supposed to be, and we very well should be, a country governed by the rule of law. And so whatever we decide are the eligibility criteria, we need to hold them to it. And one of the absolute essential ones is that whoever his name is on that ballot is the person casting the ballot. And that somebody who's not eligible to vote or somebody else does not get to make their mark in there. That should be, and in fact, most Americans are behind that. So that's one thing that Trump says he wants to do, which it's a puzzle to me why that hasn't happened before, because with that many people already agreeing to it, seems like we could have gotten to that point before. But the other one, though, on the mail-in ballot, that's a different situation. There is a lot more party concern on that one. So that's one of the things that Trump mentioned that he wants to get done with the nuclear option in the Senate, and that's on the mail-in ballot. But my analysis and my assessment has been, and my research has shown, that most of the analysis, the honest analysis done, shows that mail-in ballots are very much safe and trustworthy as ways to vote. Because there's a number of security features and ways to protect against fraud. The claim by many make, and very often this is without substantiation or gross exaggeration, they say, no, it's not. And because many people just think, okay, well, I put a letter in a mail. How do I know where it's going to go? How do I know if anybody steals it, et cetera? And so you may not know. So it just seems, when someone tells you it can be changed, then unfortunately, a lot of people believe it. But the fact is that there are safeguards involved. And if there's any holes in that, then let's get it fixed or so. But in any case, we haven't always had mail-in votes. If that's something that the American people want to do, then that's fine. But when you want to say, I'm going to disenfranchise half of America, and I'm going to do something that our party likes because we think that it's the best, and I don't care what the rest of you think, if you go down that path, then you alienate and anger a whole lot of people. And on top of what's already been going on, that is a real problem. So those are one issue that's going to continue to exacerbate it, and that's going to continue to raise the problem of the two sides hating each other and not trusting the government. Because right now you have a situation, and it's accelerating, to where the Democrats don't feel like that the government cares about them if it's not their party, and of course vice versa. And the Republicans are the same way. And there was a lot of people that were ready to go up in arms, if we're being honest. A lot of news reports that were out there. If the election in 2024 had not gone Trump's way, there was many Republicans, many conservatives that were ready to take up arms if necessary. It's just, you don't have to do much research to be able to see a lot of those reports were out there. And now then, even still, there's concern heading into 2026 where there's already accusations of people not following the laws and that they're going to cheat, and their things are not going to turn out the way that they're supposed to, and certainly not the way that their side wants to. And there's worry about where this is going. That's going to be exacerbated on the Democratic side if they feel like this nuclear option is going to disenfranchise some of them and just disregard what they're wanting to do. That's one of the bigger issues also. But there is some even more specifically about the 2026 midterm elections. Listen, I'm a conservative by nature, and I don't consider myself a Republican anymore or a Democrat. I don't like either party. I don't like the leadership that are involved with them. I haven't for quite a long time now. But policy-wise, morality, et cetera, wise, I'm a conservative. But when I see President Trump taking this action that he did, and especially in coordination with the state of Texas earlier this summer, to say we are intentionally going to change the laws and the district boundaries for the state of Texas with the overt intent not to have equal representation, not to give everybody a fair shake, not to make sure that the landscape is equal and whoever has the best policies can win, but specifically to have the Republican Party win and to disadvantage the Democratic Party. That was going to be a real problem to me. And I thought a real alarm, and certainly it was for many Democrats. Here is President Trump earlier this summer without any hesitation or embarrassment saying, yes, I want an advantage.
On Texas, how many more seats do you want the Republicans to draw?
5.
And then what if California, New York, Illinois, and other blue states?
Yeah, well, that's
decide to do
okay
this?
too, but 5. I think we get 5. And there could be some other states. We're going to get another 3 or 4 or 5 in addition. Texas would be the biggest one, and
So
that'll be 5.
are you calling then for a complete redrawing of the congressional map ahead of
No,
next year?
just a very simple redrawing. We pick up 5 seats.
And
But
where
we
is
have a couple of other states where we'll pick up seats also.
So it's like, yeah, no, I'm not worried about redrawing everything. Just want 5 seats. Don't care how they get it done. Don't care where it is. That's what I want. Now, what kind of confidence can you have in the government of the United States of America when you see the guy at the top intentionally saying, I'm going to change the rules that benefit my side because I want your side to lose? And so that means you are disenfranchised. So you're drawing districts inside of Texas to where it says, if you're not of my party, then I'm going to rig it so you can't win. Think about that. Even if you're for what Trump has said, understand at the bottom line, what he is saying is, I'm going to disenfranchise everybody who's not a Republican in those districts. And I want the lines drawn so that there's just not enough Democrats to ever win, so that it can almost only go to the Republicans. Trump famously to this day still claims that the 2020 election was rigged. He doesn't want it when it's rigged against him, but he has no problem openly saying, I'm going to rig it in my favor on Texas. And interestingly, so even in that question there, and I think that was in July, the guy who was asking the question said, well, what if California does the same thing? You say, oh, that'll be fine. Anyway, like I'm saying, there's going to be Texas, and I think North Carolina and some other places where he thinks that they're trying to get some other things done. Well, that's one of the issues that he didn't have then, kind of does now. And as a matter of fact, I mentioned at the outset of this show here, one of the big part of the blues wave yesterday was Proposition 50 in California, where they changed their rules from what they had done, because they had said, okay, we're going to have this situation where our rules or our districts are going to be drawn by an independent commission that's going to be based on a lot of fairness issues, so that nobody gets a leg up and that the actual people get to vote. And whoever wins, whoever has the best idea, whatever party can influence the most people, they're the ones that are going to win. And now then, the governor, Gavin Newsom, is saying, you know what? We have to reconsider that. This is one of the implications and the results and the consequences of what Trump is doing, which is going to further degrade the trust in the entire government of the United States. Here's what Gavin Newsom says now.
He doesn't play by a different set of rules. He doesn't believe in the rules. And as a consequence, we need to disabuse ourselves of the way things have been done. It's not good enough to just hold hands, have a candlelight vigil, and talk about the way the world should be. We have got to recognize the cards that have been dealt. And we have got to meet fire with fire. And we've got to be held to a higher level of accountability. So that's what this is about. It's not complicated. We're doing this in reaction to a president of the United States that called a sitting governor of the state of Texas and said, find me 5 seats. We're doing it in reaction to that act. We're doing it mindful of our higher angels and better angels. We're doing it mindful that we want to model better behavior, as we've been doing for 15 years in the state of California with our independent redistricting commission. But we cannot unilaterally disarm. We can't stand back and watch this democracy disappear. We can't stand back and watch this democracy disappear district by district all across this country, not just in Texas, but in Missouri, where J.D. Vance went just a week ago, in Indiana, in places like Ohio, in places like Florida. We need to stand up.
Let me just kind of capture what he's saying there. In the Democratic mind, and I've talked to some of my Democratic friends here of late, and they enforce this. Say, yes, this is the case. That he's saying, we've been trying to play by the rules. You can disagree with them. You can say, no, they really haven't. But that's what they think. And in their view, they have tried to play by the rules. And at least in this one issue here, where Gavin Newsom's talking about their independent commission, they did. It was, by all accounts, something close to a fair situation, to where both Republicans and Democrats were on this commission. They tried to get it so it was as fair as it could be, and they had judges to adjudicate it, et cetera. That's what they were trying to do. But they're saying no more. Now that we're not going to try to play fair. Now he can say, well, we're going to do it with our better angels, and we're doing it the right way, as he said there, with the right motivations. Look, part of it is, you can understand, if he thinks that playing fair in the state of California means that the national party for the Democratic side is going to be at a disadvantage, because there's going to be basically cheating going on in Texas by disenfranchising whole 5 congressional districts away from the Democrats, so that they don't even have a legitimate shot at competing for it. He's going to say, well, why should we follow the rules here? We're going to do the same thing they're going to do, so that we can try to balance that out. And now then we're going to try to go find 5 Democratic seats to make the balance. That's what the claim is. But, you know, when he has said, and some other reporting has said, well, okay, we'll do this for a while, and then we'll go back to our independent way. No, they're not. They're not going to do that. Nobody's going to get political power for their state and then just go back and hand it back over and say, all right, well, now later on, we'll go back and make it fair. It's not going to be. That's human nature. It's naive to even suggest such a thing. But that's where we are right now. And then let's go back to Trump. So when I showed you in that soundbite just a second ago, when the reporter asked him, well, what if California does it? He said, oh, that'll be fine. Anyway, like I was saying here, I'm looking for all these seats. He's just thinking zero-sum terms. He's thinking, all right, they'll keep doing what they're going to do, and I'm just going to grab all these additional seats over here for my party. Well, as it turns out, now then you see Gavin Newsom says, yeah, that ain't going to happen. We're going to do the same thing you're going to do. Well, now, all of a sudden, on Truth Social, Trump is somewhat less enthusiastic than he was back in July. Gary, if you can toss that one up here, I want to put this up. This is what he wrote. I think it was a couple of days ago, yesterday, as a matter of fact. He says, the unconstitutional redistricting vote in California is a giant scam, in that the entire process, in particular the voting itself, is rigged. All mail-in ballots where the Republicans in that state are shut out is under very serious legal and criminal review. Stay tuned. So it's not mail-in ballots. That's a separate issue. That doesn't matter how the districts are done. That's a separate issue that can be addressed. And if there's anything that's not fair about it, then by all means make it fair. But he's talking about the whole redistricting is a scam. Listen, I even if you are a dyed-in-the-wool Republican, how can you possibly justify and support when the leader of your party is unambiguously, unapologetically, unembarrassingly trying to go to multiple states to get them to change the laws, the district boundaries, so that your party's advantage and the other party doesn't get to compete. And then when the other side does the identical thing, you're going to cry foul? I mean, if anything, you can say, well, dang, I hope they don't succeed. But it just defies just logic and ration to say we're going to try and cheat like this and skew the court, if you don't want to use that word. We're going to skew the table so that our side wins here. And then when the other side does the identical thing in a different state, you want to cry foul. I mean, this kind of behavior is what is driving people on either party even further apart. Because now then they're viewing the other side as irrational. And they're saying, why should we listen to anything these guys say? They are detached from reality. They just want to disadvantage us and advantage themselves. And you know that they openly say that they hate you. Many of them consider you by polls, and this is, of course, in both parties, increasingly view the other side as a danger and a threat to the security of our country. And that the polls over a number of years now continue to tick up in saying that in some cases, political violence is okay to set things right, to get what we want politically done. These are the kinds of actions, friends, that go more and more to allow that to happen and to make those risks of violence rise. It continues to go up. If we don't get to a situation to where there is one set of rules that's fair for everybody in all 50 states, then we are going to find ourselves one of these days to where people finally get to some point to where they say, there's no point in following the rule of law. It can't work. And you see, look at what's happening right here with California. This is the manifestation of what I'm talking about right now. You think this is a theoretical thing? It's happening before your eyes. Gavin Newsom said it with his own mouth. He said this is in reaction to what Trump is doing. So that is now this issue here. And they have decided to take actions into their own hands and say he's cheating. He's skewing the table, however you want to phrase it. We're going to do the same thing here because we don't trust the government anymore. And so now we want our people. Well, you know for sure that especially if anything resembling a blue wave happens in the House of Representatives in a year from now, next November, that the Republicans are not going to go, well, I mean, you know, we did change the rules and maybe it worked in these seats over here, but now they gained some over here and ultimately they're at the top. Well, we'll get them next time. We'll get them in the next elections, in the 2028s. Do you really think that's going to happen? Do you really think the Republicans are going to be okay with that? See, Trump is already talking about he wants the nuclear option in the Senate because he wants to just be able to rule by caveat. Basically, whatever I say, every Republican in the House and the Senate will do what I say and we'll pass everything that we want to. What do you think is going to happen if the next election in a year from now puts Democrats in charge of the House of Representatives? Let's say that the Republicans still hang on to the Senate, which is very possible. But if now then the Democrats have the House and suddenly they have all kinds of power that they don't have right now, then Trump is a virtual dead, a dead duck. I mean, he's not going to, a lame duck. He's not going to have any success at all because they're going to do everything they can to gum up the works. And so if you're not a dyed-in-the-wool Republican or a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, if you're just an American who just wants the government to work, who just wants the Congress to pass a damn budget to do the minimum level to keep the country functioning, then you're going to be angry and upset. Because now then we have this situation to where nothing is going to happen. I mean, we're in a government shutdown right now with the Republicans in charge of all three houses of Senate and the House of Representatives and the White House. What do you think is going to happen in another year if it's after, or at least after the next election? If now all of a sudden there's a split house and the Democrats have the lead in one of the houses, how much more likely is it we're going to get into another shutdown? Because the next time the budget comes up, if they can't even pass it now, you get in a mixed government here, and it's going to be even less likely. There is going to come a point, folks, to where enough people finally just get fed up with it and say, our country, our government cannot function, and people are going to take matters into their own hands. just like Gavin Newsom is doing right now. And this particular event, it's an electoral issue. But you are fooling yourself if you don't recognize that the further down this dysfunctional path we go, that people aren't going to be taking other matters into their hands. And once this thing starts going on, when you already have an environment that's so supercharged with people hating each other because of their party affiliation, and more finding it okay to contemplate political violence to achieve your outcomes, it's only a matter of time before some spark somewhere sets something off. That's where we're heading. That's why I'm so adamant about doing these updates here, because this one here, what Trump is doing with the possibility of the nuclear option in the Senate, and he is doing with the state of Texas to changing the rules so that it disenfranchises all the Democrats that live in that district. And now then that the state of California is doing whatever they can to do the same thing in reverse, taking matters into their own hands. You see that this is not something that's going to go backwards, folks. It's only going to continue on. And we better, and I'm talking leaders at every level here, people at every level needs to say, it's time to cool the jets here. We need to sober up and wake up while there's still time to do something about it, while it's just a legislative or an elective issue and it doesn't get to the violence phase yet. It's coming. I'm telling you, it's coming. There's no reason to think it's not. It's illogical for it to have gone all this way and then suddenly think that magically, even though all these trends are moving, they're just not going to go all the way. Too many people think, hey, but we're Americans. That doesn't happen here. It does, folks. It can and it will if we don't do something. There's nothing magical about us. Countries and regimes and empires throughout human history have had the same kind of dynamics. And they all thought that they were better. They all thought they were different. They could all see in the rearview mirror. They could all see these other empires that had fallen, and they could see and intellectually understand why they did. But they could say, yeah, well, that was happened to them, but we're smarter than that now, and we see it, so we can stop it. This is the time to stop it. If you want to be smart, if you want to be intelligent, this is your moment to where you interdict that path. Because if you don't, then we're going to be no different than any other regime, and violence is going to come to our shores from within, and it's going to be all of us. It's not just going to be one side. That's where we are, folks. So let's sober up while we have a chance and stop this descent before it gets too late. Thanks very much, folks. I appreciate you watching. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.